Hey, so I was thinking about this uh, Mangini, the hobby president, you all know. He asked this question today and just wanted some responses. Asked for some video responses, and it's been. I was actually watching the video on my lunch today, and I thought, man, I really want to respond to that. He was asking why do we almost apologize for our cards when we're showing them, and whether it's the grade or whatever it is, and um, it's an interesting question, and I think there's at least a couple of things. One is, at least for me, I guess I should say, I'm assuming this is true for a lot of people, but recently getting into this community, there are some things that are kind of intimidating, and I don't think it's intentional, and I want to make this clear. And please hear me out as I'm talking. I'm not talking about the people who are doing the sharing. There are certainly people within the card hobby that are very abrasive and spend a lot of time bragging and just telling you about how awesome their cards are. And uh, but then there are guys that show these amazing cards, and I'm going to mention a few, and again, please hear me out. I don't mean to be. I'm certainly not speaking negatively about the people, but I was thinking about some of the cards that show up during like Mike and Chris's uh, competition. That their card show. Mike, baseball collector, and Chris from Missouri. As they do these contests and see who has the higher grades of players. It's a great show. I watch it every time it comes out. I really enjoy it. But I think if you're not if you're not paying attention, it can be very easy to think that it's all about the grade. But they both say it in about every video that they put out where they're doing their showcase showdown. Some one of them or both of them will make the comment that it's really not about the grade. They just do that for fun. It's a way to have some competition. But if all you're doing is looking at the cards and looking at the grades, and then you look at your own cards and your own grades, sometimes things like that can be intimidating. And there are other people who have these fantastic. I was thinking about Tony, Southern Collector, and man, he has some incredible cards, like cards I'll never touch. And it's very easy if you don't pay attention to him to be intimidated by the cards. Now, he's a he's Tony. He's from Tennessee, and I got to tell you, Tennessee. Some of the nicest folks you'll meet are from Tennessee. I lived down there for a few years, um, and and actually, if you'll pay attention to him, one of the things I love about Tony is his ability to tell stories. He's such a great advocate for vintage cards and learning about these players and collecting out of that, kind of collecting their cards because the story of the person really matters. And it was funny. Mangini posted a video of his behind the scenes, of Tony's behind the scenes, and one of his daughters mentioned the fact that she thought he should have been a history teacher. And I've thought that from time to time. He would have been a great history teacher. But if all you're doing is paying attention to the cards and not paying attention to him, it's why I think YouTube's actually better than Instagram. I like the idea of Instagram. I suppose I have an account I never use, but the beauty of YouTube is you can actually hear these guys talk. And the more I've gotten to know the people within this community, kind of the the not just the vintage, but the card community here on YouTube, which includes some guys that collect from the 80s and 90s and even modern stuff. It doesn't take long to figure out that these guys they're not boastful and bragging. They don't look down on people because of their cards. But even so, I think we can trick ourselves into believing differently. It's why I think it's important, for me at least, to also watch guys who have collections that aren't the super nice or the super vintage, or who just who collect a little bit more like me at times. I was thinking about Keith in his lonely basement. I love watching his videos, and he gets all these Don Mattingleys, and I look at those and I think, man, those are great cards. I love those cards. I love that era of cards and card collecting. But I was laughing at him. This was back before Strongsville. He was talking about going to the trade night, and he said, I got a card for trade night, and he pulled it out as his Pete Lecoq card, and it was just so funny to hear him kind of talking about that. And last year at the end of the year, he did a video where he talked about his 25 least valuable cards, and as he was flipping through these cards, all from the junk wax era. I was like, yeah, I have that card, and I have that card, and yeah, I've got that card. I couldn't do that for the people who were posting the 25 most valuable, and not that there's anything wrong with any of that. I just think that for our own sakes, we need balance. We need people who can share all kinds of things, and really most of the people in this community, I feel like, have that. They have the balance. They're not just sharing the big $1,000 cards. They're sharing other cards that they're also very excited about. And so, kind of thinking about that, I thought, well, what I'm going to do? I'm going to show some cards that are that if I'm not careful, I suppose I could be embarrassed about. Which you might think, wait a minute, your last video you showed 1988 Wade Boggs. There's no value there, and so what could possibly embarrass you? Well, you might be surprised. I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you my first playing day Sandy Koufax. I'm going to show you one of the cards that I picked up from my Hall of Fame binder, and I don't know, maybe a couple more just for fun. But these are cards that are definitely not high value in any stretch, but also just kind of maybe can point out some mistakes I've made along the way, and just as I'm continuing to learn, as we all are, I think, and just enjoy the hobby along the way. So hold on tight, and I'll turn the camera around, show you a few cards, and we'll go from there. So the first thing I'll show you is just a few cards from kind of my childhood, how about a starting lineup? Dwight Gooden. Another one of these cards. It's one of these, just these, not, I don't know, oddball. I don't like that phrase either, but off the beaten path anyway. How about an 87 Don Mattingly? Speaking of Keith, Lonely Basement. How about 91 Donruss? I mean, first of all, 91 Donruss. I mean, that's pretty much height of the junk wax, right? And that's Ken Griffey Jr. When people talk about the kind of the junk wax era of baseball cards, like even the term kind of bothers me a little bit, if I'm being honest, just because it's junk wax. I realize why we call it that, this overproduced era, nothing of value, but there's so much nostalgia in these things for me. So that's one thing. Sometimes it can feel like I'm sharing things like that, and maybe those who are like me and like those cards, there's not a huge space for that necessarily on YouTube. But it was funny when I was again in Strongsville, not trying to beat that dead horse, but I was talking at our table. We were talking about that, and some of the guys were just asking it. We're introducing each other, and one of the guys was asking kind of how I collect, and I talked about I collect some of the junk wax stuff, and it was Warren D and CLE, and he said, oh, all these guys have junk wax, they just don't show it, and I kind of laughed and appreciated that. But anyway, I really wanted to show you some other cards as well, though. When I started into vintage, I'm going to show you two cards about when I started into vintage, and low budget, and just, there's just a part of me that wanted to get some of these players, and I picked up a couple of Roberto Clemente's, and I didn't have a lot left over for that show. I was at a card show down in Pittsburgh. It's the Pittsburgh Card Show. It's actually in Washington, but I was going through one of these value boxes, and I found a Willie Mays. Of course, it's a checklist that's been filled in, and it just made me laugh, and I was like, what the heck, who cares? I'll take a Willie Mays. And how about a Sandy Koufax card? I love these league leaders cards anyway. The funny thing about this Koufax card and why it was in the value box, along with, I know it has a couple other players, but I was pretty hyped about the Koufax, is some kid decided to take a pen and give him a blue collar. So I actually thought it was kind of funny at the time, but sometimes you look at these cards that people show and they're high grade, and I know there are guys who would never pick that up, and that's okay. I don't feel like I need to justify, but sometimes it can feel like maybe we shouldn't show these, and I'm not apologizing for this today, and not asking you to tell me it's okay. I'm just trying to explain kind of where some of us are coming from. But then there's another side of this, and I've talked about how I've been learning a lot, and it was kind of an intentional. My Hall of Fame binder and other ways that I've collected have been very intentional about learning the history of the sport and the history of cards. And so I'm going to show you two places I made a mistake. One is I'm looking for Hall of Fame players. And so when I was looking up a list of Hall of Famers, one of the guys whose names came up, I was at a card shop, I think. I don't think this was at a show. I can't remember for sure. And I found a Hall of Famer for a pretty good price, and I picked it up. And it's Mr. Whitey Herzog. Oh. And of course, some of you already know my mistake. Whitey Herzog is not a Hall of Fame player. He is in the Hall of Fame, but I'm not collecting Hall of Fame managers. I'm collecting Hall of Fame players. And so that was just a mistake. Like I made an honest mistake, picked up a card that, and obviously I didn't spend a lot on it, but just kind of the idea of sometimes it's embarrassing to talk about things and be found out, or to show things that were mistakes, clear mistakes. Like I'm still learning, and talk about still learning. I needed to get an Enos Slaughter card, and was at a table that had one, and I was like, man, that's nice. I'm gonna buy that one. Got a pretty good deal on it. It's not in perfect shape, but it's nicely centered. Good looking picture. I like these cards, and I needed that year of Topps, and of course, now you all know my mistake as well. That is not a Topps card. That is his Bowman card. Nice looking card. I love the card. But it does not belong in my Hall of Fame binder. So it's just yet another mistake that I made with my card purchasing. And so this is it for me. It's like sometimes I don't show stuff because, well, nobody cares. Sometimes I don't show stuff because it's a wonderful illustration of my ignorance, and I just don't need to be telling people how stupid I am. And sometimes it's a mix of the two, and I try not to be apologetic, and I appreciated the question, the way that Mangini posted, to kind of phrase the question, and he said, I'm not trying to be insulting, and I didn't take it that way at all. As a matter of fact, I was kind of laughing as he was talking through the reason for his question. Is so often it can be easy to feel like we need to apologize for cards that aren't as nice as somebody else's. But I've got to tell you, I'm pretty happy to have that Whitey Herzog, pretty happy to have that Enos Slaughter, pretty happy to have my Sandy Koufax, pretty happy to have my my Willie Mays, and just enjoying the process, and this has been the big thing for me, is I've just been enjoying the process of learning and collecting, and will continue to do so. I'm going to another card show this week, and will hopefully not pick up cards that I don't need, but will hopefully pick up some things that I can show off maybe next week sometime. But anyway, if you watch this long, I appreciate it. This is just my thoughts on the matter. I'm looking forward to kind of hearing some other people as they respond to Mangini. So anyway, that's it for today, and we'll catch you next time.